Mm.
Okay, Olivia,
Mm.
we are gathered here again today
Mm.
to tune into the course that we're going to be running, the 9-month course, Earth Leadership, that's going to be starting in February 2025,
Mm.
my mother's birthday.
Mm.
I believe a birthday close to one of your relatives as well, if I remember
Close to
right.
my birthday, actually.
Of course, your birthday, okay.
Mm.
And yeah, we felt like we wanted to tune into what the recent elections in the US stirred in us around what we're passionate about and yeah, what we feel is alive as far as the course that we're going to be offering and the unique note of leadership that it carries.
Mm.
So yeah, we're going to go into that stuff. And we also thought that we could begin by just sharing a bit about why we do what we do. Last time we
Mm.
made a video where we shared what we do.
Mm.
And yeah, we had the impulse to share why we do what we do.
Mm.
So, Olivia Jensen, why do you do what you do?
Mm. This is like dangerous rant territory where I can start ranting. So
Your
um,
rant is welcome.
I'll try and keep it a little bit contained. Oh, what comes to me first is that I want to live in a world where people are alive.
Mm,
And, I've received some kind of feedback from my family in particular about this phrase of what does it mean to be alive? Of course, everyone's alive. But what I
mm,
mean by alive is people who vibrate love at their core
mm,
are wanting and willing to the best of our abilities to be soulful, to be loving,
mm,
to make an imprint on this world and make it a better place. And that doesn't have to look like anything. I don't necessarily subscribe to this idea that everybody has to be doing these big bang world changing things in their life, but I do really want to live in a world where what is most sacred and what is most true to the core of each of us is being percolated
mm,
and developed and nourished through our choices and through our life.
mm,
And I think that's a core part of what it means for me to be alive. There's different flavors. One is to be vibrationally current with what's actually living and breathing in us and to be in connection with the earth instead of walking around on top of the earth, but being with the earth.
mm,
And then there's different flavors of like creative expression or just to be deeply loving. Like I see all of those as facets of being alive.
mm,
And so that's what drives me when it comes to living a soulful existence and supporting others to access the deepest part of themselves. I think
mm,
at the core, there's a note around aliveness. And also, my soul is extremely turned on by freedom. And for many years, I was chasing a sense of personal freedom on the outside, wanting to feel alive and feel free. And I would do so many things, push myself so hard to feel this sense of like literally the wind in my hair, to feel, I don't know whether you've ever been super fit, but the feeling of being super fit and like running on a headland with
mm,
the wind and the sea and just this feeling of like ecstatic union with the elements.
mm,
That's when I feel most alive. And then having done my soul work and gone through stages of initiation, I've realized that, yeah, that's a part of me, but it's also, I'm no longer seeking that with the same fervor because there's a sense of freedom that lives in me. And that's what I also feel really passionate about. Like, I want to ignite that in people and I want to support people to stand really, like, for whatever they believe in. I don't really mind what it is,
mm,
but to bring through, like, what are you actually here for? And why do you do what you do? And that's kind of why I do what I do, to help
mm,
people find out theirs as well.
mm.
Yeah.
I appreciate everything you shared. I remember once I was advertising on Facebook for Jesslyn actually and one of her friends to be able to stay somewhere that they could stay in the neighborhood that I was living in, and I described them as two conscious women. And one of my friends from university posted underneath, "I would hope so." Yeah. So yeah, and that kind of points me to the difference in the amplification of certain aspects of our experience that comes
Mm,
with dedicated deep work that we can go through. It's to someone who is less familiar with consciousness work, describing people as conscious, it can seem a bit strange, like I
mm,
would hope
mm,
so. I would hope these people
mm,
are conscious, what does
mm,
that mean if they're not? And
mm,
for people who are less familiar with really connecting to and widening the stream of life within them, then describing people as alive or not can seem confusing.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
why do I do what I do? Yeah, I think for me, some of the most powerful peak experiences of my life have been of the majesty and sacredness of what we are, we human beings, in addition to the majesty and sacredness of what life is and what this earth is. And yeah, I've also had a journey, I've had a struggle, I've had a fight to love humanity.
mm,
And um, yeah, despite my fight and despite my struggle, I have had life-changing openings to the divinity of what we are. And my heart has felt broken to witness every day the way that we are on this
mm,
planet. And yeah, my life lives in that tension as well, because I also think I don't really know how to survive in this world if with it just being as it is. I'm
mm,
not built for this, and I think most people aren't really built for this.
mm,
And I think I'm just less good at um yeah, just at coping, to be honest, with things just as they are. So
mm,
there's a drive in me that is at the core of my life, which is that I must participate in change. I
mm,
must participate in change that moves us towards a world and a society and a way of being with each other that reflects what my heart knows about what we are and the
mm,
beauty of this life and the
mm,
beauty of this earth and the beauty of this cosmos.
mm,
Yeah, and I'm also, I mean, it's lucky with that junkie because I'm just turned on deeply by the adventure of this. I'm turned
mm,
on deeply by living in, yeah, I'm turned on deeply by taking the risk of trusting moment to moment alignment and
mm,
following that path, even when it's scary,
mm,
and letting life show me that it is trustable.
mm,
Like letting life show me that even though it might be scary and even though it might be really uncomfortable for my personal self in XYZ situations,
mm,
that life actually is deeply trustable.
mm,
And it's actually the most trustable thing. So,
mm,
and I want the one
mm,
as well. Like I'm so much more interested in the revelation of the soul shattering divinity of the one that my heart and my body know
mm,
as the foundation stone of the society that we can build, because that is building upon what is most and truly real,
mm,
than I am in my own personality ambitions or, kind of agendas or anything like that. So,
mm,
yeah, that's why I do what I do.
mm.
And for my son, I do what I do for my son as well, like
Yeah.
so that my son can inherit a world which is very different to the world that I inherited, and
Mm,
the generations to come as well.
mm. Yeah, I really feel this resonance with this idea of it just not being good enough for me
Mm,
to walk along, not attempting to do something
mm,
about the world that we live in. And for many years, I found myself trying to play within the structures, like, okay, how do I make change? And then feeling so helpless. of, well, where would you start? Do you start with gun crime or the environment or racism or homophobia or, whatever? And actually, over time, I feel like I've found my natural place in the order of things.
Mm,
And it feels really clear, okay, this is actually where my work is. This is where I am the change maker.
mm,
And that's an incredibly relieving place to be. And for me, that's a part of the course that we're running is to either support people to deepen into that's already happening,
mm,
or help them to find the stream, because so many of us, we want to change the world, we want to make the world a better place, but we can't tackle everything. But I think there's something so profound that I've found through the teachings, the Trans Himalayan teachings, that's helped me find my place in the ecosystem.
mm,
And I no longer feel like I'm trying to change the world. I feel like I'm very clear about where's my path for
mm.
me to feel like I'm deeply in service and feel the sense of purity that you're talking about with, yeah, an actual an ease and a relaxation into, okay, I've been put here and I'm supposed to be doing this.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I really feel that too. And I'm reminded, I think it was 2 nights ago or something, I found myself on YouTube watching a documentary about prisons in the US and highlighting the stories, like actually having incredibly privileged access to interview and listen to the stories of some of the most long-term incarcerated humans in
Mm.
certain prisons over there. And it was utterly heartbreaking to me,
Mm.
utterly heartbreaking. Particularly, one story of a black man who killed two elderly white women when he was 13 years old,
Mm.
essentially because he was involved in gang stuff that he got sucked into, and stuff just went really bad, and
Mm.
it was not premeditated in any way. It was just a terrible, utterly tragic, horrendous situation. And he was incarcerated at the age of 15, and he was being interviewed now, 26 years later,
Mm.
literally, 2 times beyond how old he was when he committed this crime. And the man was clearly a man of deep heart and
Mm.
integrity and decency, who fully faced the severity and the eternal injustice of the crime that he'd committed. And
Mm.
simultaneously, you could see his heart breaking with the
Mm.
knowledge that he lives with every single day in his cage, that he will die in that prison.
Mm.
There's no possibility of parole for his sentence.
Mm.
And yeah, I watched that, and after there's parts of me tearing, my heart tearing itself apart. Like, how can I do anything else than, how can anyone, when you see something like that, just go about your business and be like, oh,
Mm.
okay, well, getting along. Like, I know that man is in that
Mm.
prison cell right now,
Mm. Mm.
along with so many other humans who will not get supported any day soon in the real processes of healing and rehabilitation, that once you've
Mm.
done a bit of healing work and once you've done a bit of soul work, are absolutely 100% possible.
Mm.
And yeah, just, for me, the criminal justice system is one of, as like you said, it's one of like 20 areas where parts of me go crazy inside
Mm.
myself, to be honest, at the
Mm.
idea that this is how shit is on the planet.
Mm. Mm.
And what do I do? And I think a lot of people do go through that process as well, of once their soul starts to come online and their heart starts to become more naked, and they feel that they are love. They feel the possibility of a pathway of love for all of us, and the redemption that love brings, that ultimately everything in the right time can be healed.
Mm.
Um, then what do I do? Because actually I
Mm.
see a million things, around me, which are so thirsty or hungry for the love that wants to come into this world. And yeah, the truth is that we all have to find our right place.
Mm.
we all have to find our place and trust that if we're all saying yes truly to
mm,
the work of aligning ourselves with what wants to come through us, we're going to be put in our right place. And for
mm,
some people, it's going to be doing the work around the change and transformation of the criminal justice system. For some people, it's going to be animal rights, and for some people, it's going to be leadership development, and for some
mm,
people, it's going to be conflict resolution in war zones, or whatever it
mm,
is. For some people, it's going to be you know being a mother,
mm,
or it's going to be whatever it is. But it's that piece, I feel like I learned this piece through pain. It was one of the many lessons I've learned through pain at a particular point in my life, that if we all step up and step in together, then we've got this.
mm,
And none of us can try and take responsibility, at least as a personality, for the whole.
mm,
But is this asking all of us to find our place?
mm,
Maybe that's a
mm,
segue as well to the whole, contemplation
mm,
around the American election, because
mm,
I was sharing with you a couple of days ago that something that I am respecting and
mm,
also struggling with on a certain level, and feeling the problematic nature of is, witnessing the rhetoric in the Trump Republican camp around the withdrawal of attention of the United States from
mm,
the global scene back into, like, we'll just focus on America, leave the world to work itself out.
mm,
And, whilst I fully respect and totally honor the importance of every nation giving right attention and right energy to sorting itself out, and
mm,
not participating in, trade routes of globalization and infrastructure stuff, which is actually draining to the essential energy and health of their own nation, just because we're in a globalized world, like,
mm,
no to that, no to endless international bureaucracy that
mm,
actually, creates 1,000 different lines of red tape around you just doing stuff rightly in your own nation. No to that. And we are an inevitably profoundly interconnected planet that
mm,
is increasingly facing planetary scale challenges and crises that do not respect national borders,
yeah,
whether it's in terms of the ripples of economic instability, environmental crisis, a number of other issues, like health issues and pandemics and so on. Yeah, it's, this doesn't just require the United States to maintain its right engagement with the planet. It requires humanity. It
mm,
requires every nation to balance the equation um, of the world and home, So yeah, I just don't think that's avoidable. And I find the whole conversation and the whole narrative around that problematic.
yeah. Mm. Yeah, it links a little bit to what we talked about in our last call about responsibility.
Mm,
And I think all of us know inside ourselves, where am I avoiding taking responsibility for my actions? And where am I actually in alignment?
yeah.
And yes, there's this macro picture where it's easy for society to sit back and say, oh, well, this is what Trump wants, and we're going to vote for him because we want change or
Mm,
whatever it may be. But actually, are we all actually doing our bit? You
mm,
know, I always think this about people who don't pick up their dog poo on a beach, or like they just leave their plastic dog poo bag, or like they pick up the dog poo and then they leave the dog poo bag, which is plastic,
mm,
on the floor because they don't want to carry it to the next bin. And I always think, who are you? You know, who are you?
mm,
And they're these micro examples of a macro picture where it's more seductive sometimes and it's easier to just slide through, oh, well, we can outsource that responsibility to him because he's the leader of the free world, or we can outsource the recycling responsibility to the local council because they're shit anyway, and the government's this and the government's that. And actually, on a deeper level, like, are we actually in alignment? with our
mm,
actions? Are
mm,
we actually aware and respecting the fact that we do live in a globalized world, that
mm,
it's not possible anymore to be like my little self having my own experience?
mm,
Um, I mentioned yesterday when we were speaking about this that I think there's this tendency in affluent, more privileged society to not really wake up to certain things until the war zone's on our doorstep.
mm,
And some people just don't have that
mm,
opportunity.
mm,
The war zone is there from the minute they wake up in the morning to the minute they know that they'll probably end, their life will end.
mm,
And we're so privileged to not have that banging on our door. But in other ways, it really is, health crises, like so many things are changing. The ways that so many women, for example, I see a lot of friends having challenges getting pregnant. And it's
mm,
part of a collective challenge with the fact that we're all becoming less fertile, men
mm,
and women,
mm,
because of toxicity and all these different things. And I don't think it's possible anymore to say this war zone's happening here and this thing's happening here on a, tearing up all the different threads of what everything is. Actually, what sits underneath is we're all part of one human family and we're all impacted by the water we drink
mm,
and the things that happen.
mm,
Um, I woke up this morning and said to my partner, it's been raining non-stop for 2 weeks here, like torrentially. And he said, oh, it's because the Moroccans are messing around with the clouds above Morocco. And I mean, I haven't looked into this and I'm not a scientist. I don't know how true or not true this is, but it shows me like, wow, okay, there's flash floods happening everywhere
mm,
until it's on your doorstep, causing chaos.
mm,
It's easy to feel a little bit separate from it. Obviously,
mm,
not everyone feels separate, but some people do. And yeah, just underneath it all comes to this place for me of responsibility that I personally can't be at ease with myself
mm,
when I know I'm not really acting in alignment.
mm,
Sometimes I walk past a piece of rubbish on the beach and I stop and I think, why did I just do that? And I go back and pick it up and
mm.
like internally shame myself. Mm. Insight into my psyche.
Yeah, I feel like for me it's a delicate balance because I feel, and I don't think it's one that I've fully worked out. There's one side of me which feels very, very clear that actually humans don't get to live their provincial, small little worlds anymore and defend that as kind of just like, I don't want to deal with the rest of it, actually, So, no, no, I just focus on me and I focus on at home and, we need to sort ourselves out. I've got lots of good reasons why I just want to, focus on here and they work themselves out over there, and yeah, there's a part of me which is like, you don't
Mm.
get to do that anymore. I don't get to do that anymore. We don't get to do that anymore. And I think there's actually abundant examples of the earth showing up. The alarm bell of the earth is ringing and saying, okay, you had your time.
Mm.
You had your time for actually just, people at least in the very, very privileged Western quote unquote world just working out things at your own pace and, prioritizing that ideal at the heart of liberal Western democracies, which is the quality of life of the individual and the freedoms
Mm.
of the individual for a good life and so on. And to work that out in your own time, time's up. Actually,
Mm.
there's something else waking up
Mm.
now. And I feel in a certain sense, in the dialectic between the globalism and the nationalism and the localism and so on. Um, I feel, I feel the pressure. I feel the
Mm.
pressure of us collectively feeling the inevitability of a planetary scale challenge and a planetary
Mm.
scale uh, life kind of knocking on our door and saying,
Mm.
hey, work this out,
Mm.
So I feel there's a part of me that doesn't really have space, like hears it and also doesn't really give much credence to the voices of, defended provincialism in terms of, our consciousness essentially. And there's another part of me which has a lot of sympathy for it and, it
Mm.
has a sense of can legit understand that it's just too much actually
Yeah.
for a lot of people to be able to navigate feeling what's going on to people in Sudan right now,
Mm,
or to be able to navigate just spending a moment with the number of children, and innocents who have died in Gaza, or to just spend a moment with the fact there's probably a mother saying goodbye to her son right now in Ukraine,
mm,
Russia, and just these global. We haven't been doing this for a long time, us
mm,
humans, in actually just having access to this type of information, even though,
mm,
whatever the rise of the internet over the last 20, 25 years, nothing in the
mm,
wider scheme, and our nervous systems are barely
mm,
prepared
mm,
to handle being plugged in
mm,
essentially in this way. And
mm,
there has to be space for a there has to be space for people to have their own scale of what they can hold, you
mm,
know. And for some people, that really might be, I can hold my, being connected to my community.
mm,
I can hold that right now. And
mm,
my genuine care and my sense of dedicated service is up for playing out in relation to the health and thriving of my community.
mm,
Some people, it's going to be on broader scales. And of course, the shadow that we've got to look out for there is like, where's it avoidance?
mm,
Where am I staying comfortable? Where am I
mm,
closing off my heart and my body from other human beings just because it's easier for me? I live a more comfortable life. I just don't
mm,
really want to deal with more right now.
mm,
And so I think for me, the piece that I focus on and we focus on is leadership,
mm,
because with all of that said, I'm not really interested in having arguments and conversations with people about what they should be doing with their consciousness.
yeah,
I have no interest in that. What I do have interest in is finding the people who, when they hear a conversation like you and I are having, have a clear bell ringing in their heart and in their
mm,
soul that has them know that it is their destiny
mm,
to grow into being a human being, that the one vibrant divine life that lives and vibrates at the heart of everything is beating in their heart, where their
mm,
consciousness is able to increasingly embrace and hold a wider and wider scale of us,
mm,
humanity, one, family,
mm,
earth, planetary.
mm,
Now let's work ourselves out, and
mm,
who are dedicated in their embodiment to showing up and doing the work, and and applying that. Maybe they're not going to be international diplomats, or they're not going to be, change agents who are operating transnationally or whatever. Maybe they are going to be focusing on their community, but
mm,
they can feel that the context that's living in their cells and in the fibers of their muscles and their body and their heart
mm,
is that planetary scale, because
mm,
that's the evolutionary stimulus which is alive in them. So
mm,
yeah, that's why one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, right? Which is to try and,
mm.
hey, are you anyone listening right now? Is that you? Are you one of
Mm,
those people who, is
mm,
hearing this and is feeling like, oh, wait a minute, I think this is me? And then
mm,
maybe hang out with us for this time.
mm. Yeah, I love that we've come here because I think there's a ripe and rich time in the collective for those who are actually willing and able and desiring to stand up more
Mm,
and break down some of the concepts about what traditional leadership might look like. And it's clear from what we see on the world stage that what we have doesn't work, in my opinion.
mm,
Um, and me and many of us don't know what's next. But what I do feel clear about is that I feel very desiring to create space where people who are wanting to expand and explore their leadership in whatever form that takes can come
mm,
and go on this exploration together.
mm,
Yeah, it feels like such a rich time.
mm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel excited about us popping the bubbles of a bunch of the paradigms and projections around leadership that
Mm,
a lot of us still swim in a bit.
hmm
And in terms of what a leader should be, and
mm,
what it means to the label of leadership and how, how our egos feel when we put that hat on, and
mm,
um, what we then ask of ourselves to make sure that we
mm,
fulfill in the role and so on. And,
mm,
something else we were tuning into beforehand is I really think Donald Trump is such an amazing example of how human beings, so many human beings want authenticity from their
mm,
leaders on a
mm,
level that a lot, he's such an enigma and such a mystery to so many people in politics who
mm,
I noticed like still where whatever it was he
mm,
started, he really came on to his first presidential campaign 2016, we're 8 years later, a lot of people still have not worked it out, like what is happening here? What is
yeah.
the phenomenon of this man? And of course, that's a bunch of things, but I feel like one of the things that he exemplifies is just bare bones authenticity.
Mm,
And I think probably there's certain contexts where he's inauthentic, but actually, what a lot of us are getting is, oh, this guy's actually just being this guy.
mm,
And people are like, oh my God, thank you.
mm,
So many people. I mean, a lot of people are outraged. A
yeah.
lot of people are outraged and, find it terrifying and kind of, that there's such a response. But the fact that there's such a response to Donald Trump from the people who are a yes to Donald Trump, in my view, is like people are so freaking hungry and
Mm,
thirsty for an authentic human being
mm,
in a position of leadership,
mm, mm,
and trust that even when it comes with misogyny and racism and all sorts of other issues of character that a lot of us have questions around,
mm,
actually are more interested in that and are more of a
mm,
yes to that than politicians who are just clearly politicians and leaders who are clearly just playing a role,
mm, mm,
and so yeah, and who haven't recognized that the game has moved on. So
mm,
yeah, I feel like something I'm really curious about and something I'm really interested in is, okay, well, what would the emergence of leaders look like who are really in the authenticity of being centered increasingly in their soul, feeling the one life at the core of all things vibrate in their heart, and just
mm,
really honest about the struggles and
mm,
messiness and dedication and, working it out of what it means to be a human being, who are
mm,
transparent, naked in that process, revealed, who, yeah, just don't play the game of
mm,
needing to be the perfect thing, which actually
mm,
none of us are really interested in anymore.
mm,
And
mm,
but so it's authenticity, but it's a different kind of authenticity.
totally.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I think there's so many different rabbit holes we could go down here, but there was a trend a couple of years ago that kind of came in through the personal healing development space for people to start being more authentic online.
Mm,
And then there's this kind of big wash of like personal processing. I just had a
mm,
trauma session and now I'll share about my trauma
mm,
and it's not really that either. Like it's actually not performative
right.
authenticity
Yeah.
that we're looking for. It's like rooted in the truth of your soul
Yeah.
and it can be felt. It's not necessarily always able to be articulated or understood in the collective, but I feel like it can be really felt.
Mm,
And I completely agree that we're in this kind of strange, awkward time where
mm,
when there's like tectonic plates that shift and they kind of move apart and they're not quite come back together yet, but it's just all a little bit awkward. And I really see that in the political sphere.
mm,
For example, Theresa May, she was always crucified for being stiff and awkward and not kind of having a natural warmth or embodiment to her,
mm,
not having a bedside manner of what we expect many politicians to have.
mm,
Um, and yeah, she's stiff and different things, but she's actually a deeply, deeply loving, caring, very committed person.
mm,
Whatever you think about her politics is kind of not really of interest to me in
mm,
this conversation, but she was crucified when she was caught crying on the way to have her last audience with the Queen when
mm,
she was resigning, and she was having a very demure couple of tears in the back of the car, and she was caught on camera crying, and she was really plastered everywhere for that. And then there was another time when she went on a trip to Africa and she was video dancing with all these African children at a school. And it went viral, and she was just annihilated
Mm,
for not having rhythm and not being at ease. And I mean, she was obviously just awkward because she knew she's not a natural mover and she's about
mm,
to be caught on camera by the world's press, and
mm,
this is going to be horrendous.
mm,
And I just feel like, God, these people can't win. You know, she's been called
mm,
to be more authentic for many years, but then actually a peep of human emotion
mm,
just gets slandered.
mm,
And then there's the other trend, you know, that came in of politicians like starting an app or trying to be cool and like be more hip and down with the kids. And it's kind of
mm,
one of my quirks is to just watch this and just feel it's like, oh God, this is so horrendous to
mm,
watch the kind of the desire and the attempt to be seen as more human
mm.
manifested through like a boardroom decision making process of like, okay, how are we going to make you more accessible? And
Strategic,
inevitably
strategic authenticity.
it's a car crash like Joe Biden's wife in the panda suit recently. And that's not it either. Like what we're talking to is like authenticity of the soul. Like I want to see people who stand up who are like, this is why I'm alive. Like this is what I really care about and transmit from that place.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and that, whether it's in the new agey spirituality, performative vulnerability thing, or whether it's in the political sphere of performative, strategic authenticity or whatever, it's like that doesn't feel good. And also, yeah, I mean, there's just a level of toxicity in our culture and our cultures where we have an impulse to take people down
Mm,
and to yeah, to be deeply, inhumane and cruel in ways that I think themselves really need looking at. And where
mm,
that
mm,
goes for me is, because I feel the same as you. I long in my heart to feel and to witness the emergence of leaders in the political domain as well as any other domain whose hearts are on fire for humanity as a whole and who are willing to be open and transparent and honest about their humanity and so on. But I'm also aware that a lot of people don't want that. You
mm,
know, a lot of people would feel threatened by that. A lot of people just want to tear people down. A lot of
mm,
people, yeah, and it's the same thing that I've encountered in doing this singularity work in various contexts where it took me a little while to get it that, when I first launched Singularity and I was I could have been more self-reflective about the process that I'd gone through around
mm,
politics, around more self-reflective about the truth that when this really came to me, I had a whole phase where I was like, really?
mm.
Politics, really? Do I really want to go there? A lot of me does not want to go anywhere near
Are
that.
you sure?
Really? And I had to go through a kind of inner energetic chiropractic, set of
Mm,
adjustments to be like, I'm doing this, let's go.
mm, mm,
And I could have been more self-reflective about that because then when I launched Singularity and I was already in the thing of feeling the obvious, yes, of course, this is speaking so deeply to what my heart and soul feel are absolutely the thing that is needed in the
mm,
world. And then I launched it and it was like crickets.
mm.
And for a little while, I was like, what's going on? I don't understand this. And
Yeah.
then noticing when I would start to have conversations with people about politics, and
Mm,
suddenly I mention that word. I just use that word, and stuff's just gone pretty cold.
yeah.
Suddenly the field's cold, and
Mm,
suddenly there's a barrier, and suddenly there's a hardness, and
mm,
and it's hard, and it's cold, and it's shut down,
mm,
and oh, here's some cynicism.
mm,
Here's some judgment, here's some suspicion, even like
mm,
suspicion of me. Like, why on earth would I want to go anywhere near that?
mm, mm,
And it took me a little while to track what's actually going on there. And I think it's a similar thing to what's going on with the media and with that way that we tear people down is um, a lot of people are really, really, really cynical. Like we can be
Mm,
really cynical, and that's the mental layer of it. But underneath that cynicism is a lot of hurt. It's a
mm,
lot of hurt and a lot of heartbreak and a deep
mm,
sense of feeling betrayed. There's rage, there's fear, there's grief. And it's all because of the fuckery and the tragedy that we're surrounded and the abuses of power that we're surrounded by every single
mm,
second.
mm,
And it goes cold and it goes hard and it manifests itself as cynicism and suspicion, apathy, powerlessness, just like tear anyone down who tries to stand up for
mm,
something better. And, what an idiot.
mm,
And yeah, and the next layer is there's just in our bodies around,
mm,
this. So a lot of people are not connected to that. A lot of people are just connected to the cynical program,
mm,
in their head. But yeah, it connected me into the deep work of, first of all, just how this is all about power.
mm,
It's about how deep the wounds are,
mm,
that is the ocean that we're swimming in around power.
mm, mm,
And yeah, I mean, I had amazing realizations that you could dedicate a week. We could run a singularity event that did a week that was just feeling what's in our bodies
mm,
around power and politics, and it would be
mm,
explosive. It would
mm,
because of
mm,
the amount that's there.
mm,
And so anyone who is um yeah, anyone who is called to leadership, particularly in a political context, in a way that is radical and new and up for something, entering into the more authentic expressions of leadership that we're speaking about, this is part of the sober truth
mm,
of what anyone's going to have to face. And
mm,
anyone who's just feeling a call to participate in leadership in terms of their own emergence into
mm,
some, back to the beginning, whether it's, the change in the criminal justice system, animal rights, their community, just really anyone stepping out and
mm,
saying, this is me, this
mm,
wants to come through me. I'm not perfect. I don't know the way, but I have to be true to what's in my
mm,
core. And I have to
mm,
take a stand for that and just see where this
mm,
goes.
mm,
There's deep stuff in us
mm,
collectively
mm,
that it gets really scared. Like we're going to get
mm,
crucified. We're going to get excommunicated from the tribe. So,
mm,
um, yeah, this is stuff that we're going to spend some time with. We're going to need to
mm,
spend some time with in the course that
mm,
we do as well.
mm, mm. Yeah, I'm excited by the prospect of bringing together a group of people who really are interested in clean power and
Yeah.
bringing a new way of doing group to their communities as well. And yeah, a new way of doing things. And I see a lot of what this course doing is actually bolstering the capacity to stand and withstand. Because as soon as we kind of rise a little bit, then there might be these themes of what you say of wanting to be taken down, or because I think there's such a wounding in society around power that anybody that starts to emerge as this fear, okay, they're going to take something from me, they're going to dominate me, something's going to happen here, can I trust this person? But actually I really see the gestation of our course also about bolstering not only the inner work of like what's the thing,
Mm,
but also the kind of inner mechanisms to be able to actually hold
mm.
our ground and be felt. Like there's no proving needed. It's like you can feel when there's authenticity and integrity that's coming from the soul.
Yeah. 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 And I think just as we're in this, like it has me reflect on, for anyone who has an impulse to take a moment and just tune into how deep this rabbit hole goes around power, because I think going back to
Mm,
the tensions in the US around the rise of Trump and the suspicions and critique of the Democratic Party and all of this, so much of it is about power.
mm,
And it's about how we don't trust power and how
mm,
we long for a different kind of power and
mm,
how ready we are to trust, or put our faith and invest in someone who can possibly take us to a different kind of power that's more free,
mm, mm,
and so yeah, I feel personally as someone who does a lot of work with around power, I just see symptoms of this everywhere, and it speaks
Mm,
to the what and some of the work that we've been involved in, the work around power, sex, and money, and the recognition that these are the areas that have the most shadow for
mm,
human beings and for the planet as a whole. And so,
mm,
for anyone who has a drive to participate in a different kind of power emerging in the world. And for me, I just feel so freaking excited about that. I'm just like, wow, we get to go on that adventure. You get to go on that adventure if you want it. I get to go on that adventure to be people working this out and the power lives in us already. It's
mm,
like we don't need to go we don't need to attain anything unobtainable. It's in my heart. It's in your heart.
mm,
Real power.
mm,
Real power's there, and it just requires us to
mm,
drop the armor and the cynicism and the self-doubts and the investment in our own stories of disempowerment for a moment and lean into the adventure of where this life might want to go, you know.
mm,
And
mm.
so it's like my happy place.
I know. I always think that God, I found my place in the world where sex, death, money, power, all these taboo topics, like this is the kind of thing I just love to talk about. And no wonder I was always down the end of the dinner party table, making people feel awkward. Mm, mm. Well, we'll do more of these. Mm.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Olivia.
thanks, John.